minutes, depending on how that's going. And then I'm going to invite the three of us plus Dan to just answer whatever questions you've got in general. After that, we'll have lunch at a food truck outside, and then you're going to be in the 3 sessions this afternoon. So we will, my team is probably going to start breaking this area down so that we're ready for our classes tomorrow. But we'll get together and say goodbye at the very end of the day. But this is the last session we'll have in here. So this is my last opportunity. I want to tell you 2 more. And they're terrible. Because you guys have heard all my best ones. These are I'm telling you, these are terrible.
I don't know.
These are terrible.
What you said about the last ones.
Okay, so why did Noah tell the worms they couldn't get on the ark in an apple? Because they could only go in pairs.
That's pretty good.
I love that. I know it's terrible. I still love that. I know it's awful. All right, this is the last one, and this one, this is just, my 5-year-old grandson loves this joke. My wife hates this joke. My 5-year-old grandson, and so I apologize in advance. What's soft and smells like worms? Bird farts. Bird farts.
Because they ate worms.
Bird farts, because they ate worms. So if you have to explain it, it doesn't. I told you it was terrible. That was it. I'm out. You squeezed in all the juice. I'm going to turn this mic over to. Christy talked about this a little bit before. Both Steve and Christy have some online courses that you can take that are business, how you get started in the worm business and things that you should do and planning and that sort of stuff. Since they're here and you're here, you're going to get a free version of that. It's not free, you paid us some, but we're gonna include this. And what I wanted them to do was we're just going to kind of talk through how you go from 0 to being in the worm business. And not about the production side, because that's the stuff you're going to do this afternoon, but this is just the business side of it. Between the 3 of us, we own 3 very different sized businesses, and we've gone through 3 very different journeys to get to where we are. And so I'm going to start just by asking Christy to talk a little bit about the business planning process. What are the 3 or 4 steps that you ought to do, and what does it look like when you're done?
Okay. Because I was so unfamiliar with the business itself, as far as the industry and what it did and what it was all about, I would say that my first mistake was spending as much time on YouTube as I did. And that was just learning from people that I didn't know if they knew anything or not, and I spent lots and lots of time getting nothing but confused. So my view is not your view, because you're already in the business in some capacity. Is anybody here doesn't know anything about worms? Okay, very few of you. So the being confused and learning about something you know nothing about from people you don't know if they know anything about it was a lot of wasted time. I was really happy when I found the conference to attend, and that really, really saved me. So you've made such a great choice by being here just because of that very thing. You will not waste a lot of time, and I would just really, really say be careful of who you listen to, because your market is your market. And how you grow tomatoes here and how you grow worms here is very different than in Philadelphia. So, So that's, that's the first thing. As far as opening a business or starting in California and maybe other states, it's always a good idea just to find out where you stand legally in the world of, can I compost in this county? What's the zoning on the property that I need? How much can I compost before I need a permit, and that kind of thing. So I picked up the phone, called the county planners, and I said, I'm thinking about starting a worm farm, and what do I need to know? And the comment was, we don't know anything about worm farming. Of course, this was 15 years ago, so we have made some progress. And all we consider it to be is livestock. So in our county, with livestock, you have to be on ag zone land. That was the end of it. As far as becoming a sole proprietor or an LLC or something like that, I chose sole proprietor. I didn't really know where. I didn't know where I was going to go with business because I was so new at it, and I ended up just being a sole proprietor and taking that route. Steve, you've got probably a lot more to say about that part.
Yeah, so a lot of people look at LLC and they think it's some fancy, like I have a legitimate business because I have an LLC. Now, the LLC is just like a legal umbrella over you that means if you get sued. Now, a lot of people ask me, should I do an LLC? I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe. What an LLC does for you is it acts as a legal umbrella over you that if somebody sues your business, they don't sue you. You don't want to lose your house because of something you did with your business. The biggest thing I can tell you is if you do an LLC, it's not a magical shield. And what you need to make sure is you keep your finances of your business and your personal life completely separate, or else if you do get sued, then they do what's called pierce the corporate veil, and they come after you personally. What I want to make sure is none of you lose your house because of what you do with your worm farm. In terms of what Christy talked about, make sure, go find out what you can do in terms of composting in your state. What I will tell you is that if you are not being paid, and I will just say this is true in most states, if you are not being paid to take waste, or you are not composting something really difficult like animal mortalities or something like that, all you need to do is send a letter to the state in most cases and tell them this is what I am doing here. You don't need to have a compost permit. And I don't know what the numbers are and hear what kind of volume you're taking, but if you're being paid to take waste, or you're composting more than it's like 1,000 yards a month or something like that, you don't need a permit. So go find where it is what's the threshold at which you need to be a permitted composting operation. Most states have no clue what vermicomposting is. The problem is the word composting is in the term vermicomposting. We know it's a cleaner, less sticky process. The regulators don't know that. So what I would tell you in general, and of course I'm telling you how not to get sued on one hand, I'm also going to tell you this, is that the smaller you are, the more I would tell you to start doing it and then ask for forgiveness later if somebody looks you up, because you are probably not violating the law unless you are bringing in gobs of stuff, being paid to take it and composting it on your property next to some bougie neighborhood that people are going to complain about the smell. So that's what I would say. The legal formation, don't let that stop you from starting. Just like you said, you can do a sole proprietorship, you can do an LLC, then you can do an LLC subchapter S later, get a little bit more sophisticated with it. But don't let any of that stuff stop you from starting. What I would tell you is that if you are going to have a business, have some amount of business insurance, liability insurance specifically. And you will need more insurance if you are going to be hosting workshops on premises. That's a different kind of thing. Just when you go for insurance, make sure that you are being very upfront about what it is, be very honest about the totality of what you were doing in your business, because if you end up getting sued for something that's outside the scope of your policy, congratulations, you are not going to be covered by that insurance policy in that case.
So just a couple of comments on that. Here in Arizona, and I know I can't give you advice for your state. You need to find that out yourself. But here in Arizona, if you are a farm, you can do all your own on-farm composting, almost an unlimited amount. We had a composter misbehaving around the corner, and they actually got shut down because they were so smelly. But if you do it properly, it won't smell. But having agricultural zoned land in Arizona is really quite important. It lets me do almost whatever I want. We define what we do as farm work, and farm work is protected in all of the places that I've looked at with any clarity. Rhonda Sherman wrote a book. She's a professor, no longer retired professor at NCSU. But one of the things in the book is a story about a California company that was a composting company. They were growing worms. They were taking in waste. The state of California came in and redefined them as a waste producer rather than a composting, an agricultural concern, and it literally put them out of business. The regulations, the costs, the filing, the stuff they had to write down and report on literally put them out of business. So if you live in one of those states, you just need to be aware of what you can and can't do. And to Steve's point, if you stay below certain thresholds, or if you're buying and reselling stuff, you just need to know what matters in the place where you're doing the work that you want to do. As Frank pointed out, there are some farmers markets where if you didn't grow it yourself, you can't sell it. In other places, you can do other things, and I agree with Steve. Ready, fire, aim. Try it until they tell you no. You can keep doing it. Business insurance has become one of my most expensive costs. Between workers' comp, liability insurance, and property and casualty and insurance on the trucks, we spend almost $100,000 a year on insurance. Now, I'm bigger than most of you are going to start at. You get there, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Well, that's what we did. These have all grown. But I will tell you that the Farm Bureau insurance, if you operate an agricultural enterprise and you use someone like Farm Bureau, it is significantly less expensive. So if you're going to make your own castings, if what you're going to do is just buy and sell stuff, your homeowners probably covers you. The bigger you get, and when you start exploring some of these other areas, if you're going to have your own CFTs, if you're going to grow your own compost, I strongly recommend you look into somebody who actually does farming insurance for a living, because they'll get the risk. Because what we sell as a soil amendment, which we define as a soil amendment as much as we can, so we stay out of all the rules around advertising for fertilizers. What we do as a soil amendment is almost risk-free. There's almost nothing anybody can do with your product that would cause any kind of a problem. It's a natural amendment. It's super, super easy. So when they come in and tell you need, that $5 million worth of liability insurance is going to cost you $25,000 a year, they don't understand the problem. And so that's why we found dealing with farm people is really advantageous.
I would say along those lines, as far as insurance and regulations and so on, in California, we can take one product we produce, vermicompost, and it can be categorized 4 different ways. It could be a soil amendment, it could be a specialty fertilizer, it could be a mineral amendment, or it can be a soil amendment with a microbial guarantee. It's all the same product. In California, how you advertise, what comes out of your mouth, what's on your website, all is an extension of that label that has to be approved. And if you're an NPK analysis, which you get through a lab, and you put that on your label, you can only talk about NPK. You can't talk about microbes because that's not on your label. So it's really helpful to understand, and in some cases, talk to a bunch of people about, I got one product, but which category should I fall into? And, years ago, our inspector, who was really a cool farmer, talked me into being an NPK specialty fertilizer. I have since changed. I'm now a soil amendment with a microbiology guarantee, because what's vermicompost all about? About microbes. It is a soil amendment, it is organic matter, but I no longer really care, and really your customers don't care what it is. They're buying you, they're buying what you do, what you help them with. They're buying you, helping them solve problems. But what you can legally talk about is really important in California.
Good.
So just know what you can do and what you can't do, and go from there.
I spent all of 2017 banging my head against the wall in downtown Phoenix with regulators, trying to explain to them what I wanted to be without even really clearly knowing what I wanted to be. What I learned was they didn't know, and so I could tell them. And so I wrote a 1-page, 7-bullet point, very simple explanation of my business. And I said, the headline was, the Arizona Worm Farm is an agricultural enterprise dedicated to growing worms and other stuff. And I went into them and I said, we're a farm, regulate us as a farm. And they said, okay, because they just didn't know. They just didn't know. So I told them how to regulate us. And when I finally got to that point, I was fine. When I went in to ask them, it was 7 different boxes in 14 different places and 9 different forms. When I went into there and I said, this is what we are, this is how we want to be regulated, they said, okay. And they've more or less left us alone since then. It's been really good.
I love that approach. One thing that both of you talked about, especially you, Christy, with the NPK, you'll see the fancy, some of the fancier, some of the store-bought fertilizers or store-bought worm castings are going to have an NPK on there. Don't even put NPK. When you put NPK on there, you are claiming yourself that you are a fertilizer and you will be regulated. You could be regulated as such if somebody looks you up. So don't even advertise an NPK. It's like, why would you do it when it's almost trace amounts of every nutrient anyway? So don't even mess with NPK. Be soil amendment. Don't go to a regulator asking questions. Dictate the terms just like Zach did, because you will get regulated in some box that doesn't cleanly fit what you're doing anyway. So
Take a look at my label. It doesn't say fertilizer. It doesn't say amendment. It doesn't have an NPK. I don't have any trouble selling this. I will tell you one thing that I did that I'm proud of. This used to say worm castings, and I relabeled them premium worm castings, and people wanted the premium. It was the same. They wanted the premium. At one point in time when we were transitioning labels, we had both of them on the shelf, and some lady returned the regular worm castings to get the premium. But if you just put premium worm castings on your bag and then produce locally by your worm farm name, that's all you need to have. All these other things that I put on here, they just don't, you just don't need that. And so what I found is the less I say on the label, particularly for stuff that I'm selling here, the safer I am and the happier my customers are.
Can I add one thing real fast too? Most people are not planning on selling on Amazon. If you are planning on selling anything on Amazon, don't say the word microbe, because it will get flagged as a pesticide, believe it or not. And so just stay away from microbe talk on Amazon or other third-party platforms like Walmart.com or Target.com or Amazon. Won't do it.
I know you get to the talk much about this, but like say you wanted to sell on Amazon, what about like OMRI and your certificate? None of that. Do you guys need that or?
You don't need OMRI to sell on. You don't. No.
Yeah, Zach and I were just having this conversation. Understanding what the word organic means anymore is really kind of important. And when people get educated about what really organic means, if they don't really get it, then it's kind of an eye-opener for them. And I think that my big lesson on that was in the very beginning, not knowing anything about this, the only way I could really figure out why my customers were telling me I'm not having any luck is, yeah, I had my own store with my broccoli. This is raised bed potting mix. It says everything's in it, and I put the broccoli in it. Raised bed potting mix, it's got everything in it. I put worm castings and the broccoli in it. The broccoli did great. The broccoli didn't do so great over here. And anybody heard of Rosalind Christy? She's an author, and she wrote a couple of really cool books. I went to a seminar, listened to her. Afterwards, I went up and I said, Rosalind, these two plants right here, and I always take plants wherever I go. If I'm going to farmer's market or a festival, I always take befores and afters, with and without, all these things just for visuals. I took them to her. I said, Rosalind, what's going on? I'd probably been in the business a year and a half. And I told her my story. I went to Home Depot. I got this raised bed potting mix that has everything in it, and it's not doing very well. And she's kind of an opinionated person. And she said, well, we have to understand that most everything in the bagged market is sterile. There really isn't any life in it that can support plant growth. So what you've done is add some life by adding your worm castings, put some plants in it, and they responded. This over here doesn't have any support to it, so the plants really can't grow. It says it's organic. She says, well, organic, what does organic mean? So when I learned that, and I understood that people were not having success, it helped me understand how to help them. Because I thought that a bag of organic potting mix was really good stuff. And then she said, well, you don't even know where the worm castings came from or how old they are. They could have been bought overseas and been 20 years old, and they say it's worm castings. Well, it is, but what is it? So the educational process that we help people go through is really, really important. What does OMRI listed mean? You know, if you've got a variety of products in some fertilizers or a catalyst that goes into a compost tea and it's OMRI certified, what my understanding is every ingredient in there, all the way up the chain, has to be found to be organic in nature. So do the cows eat organic grass that's never been sprayed with pesticide? How far up the chain do we have to be? How complicated does it have to be? How expensive is it? And does anybody really care?